bring us. He's a white ball trying to bring us into the truth of what y'all did, and you here trying to stop the awakening. Come to the microphone. Let me go find more and fix you right now. We got to straighten all this right now.
This is completely garbage, and because the white man said we shouldn't trust it. That's the logics of Black Hebrew Israelites, but when it's for them, they support it. Anyway, I'm here today. I just finished my live. I just did a preview of what I'm going to do on your channel, and the response was crazy. So I'm going to bring some stuff out you never heard today. And I'm going to tell y'all right now, I am more convinced that blacks in America are not the ancient Israelites. They have no connection. They have nothing to do with the Jews. This is all made in America. That's all it is. The Nation of Islam, the Moorish Science Temple, the Black Hebrew Israelites, made in America. But again, I am not against you worshiping the Most High God. I'm not against you attempting to follow in the statutes, laws, and commandments. But when you start bringing in history and say it's you, Garfield got to come with that big whip. Hold on, let me get my whip for more. I got to get the whip that I'm going to use for more.
Hey, yo, Moore. Somebody get more right now. He was just in the, somebody get more right now, because I'm sick of this. He coming on crazy. He coming on talking crazy.
Hey, by the way, Bareen, I'm gonna say some stuff today that I've never said on your channel, and I promise you this. After today, you're gonna be on my side. After today, you're gonna be on my side. I'm guaranteed right now. All the Christians, I'm gonna tell y'all, y'all helped to build up America. Y'all been the best network of people ever since I've been in this country. I've always been a part of the Christian church as far as what they're doing for the community. I've always seen them. And all these guys are doing is trying to copy what the Christian church did. And they will never do it because it's more of a cult. Now, Orthodox Moor is not a part of a cult, but he believes he's a Muslim and an Israelite together. I don't know how that works. More power to him and that confusion. But I'm here to prove that no African American, no Afro-Caribbean, no Afro-South American came off the slave ships as slaves and started and showed any Hebraic, Israelite, or Jewish culture. It never happened. Never. And I'm gonna say this. I apologize for saying this, Bareen, before I say it, but they are identity thieves. That's what they are.
I can't believe this. Garfield would side with Esau. Garfield would side with Europeans and all the blackness he's supposed to be on. Keem, don't laugh. Don't laugh. Let me play this and see what he get from this. Somebody get more. Tell him we ready. Or more already ready. More already ready. I'm glad more on here right now. Shout out to both of these brothers. And we just want the truth. Please, we don't want no disrespect in the comment section. Let me play this whilst everybody getting their water, getting their stuff together. This is going to be one of the most important dialogues that we've had in a long, long time.
By the Hebrew Israelite? Simple. Deuteronomy 28 to be exact. See, in Deuteronomy, Yahweh talks about the blessings and the curses of the Israelites. The blessings they will receive if they obey the Most High and his commandments, and the curses they will receive if they disobey the Most High and his commandment. And long story short, well, y'all know how that go. The Israelites disobeyed the Most High and his commandments. And since we know that Yahweh is a God who cannot lie, the Israelites received the curses. The very curses that will be used as a sign and wonder upon their descendants forever. So ask yourself, what nation of people fit these curses? What nation of people are going through this to this day? Don't hurt yourself. It ain't that hard to figure out. But y'all want to know something? Ain't it crazy how Satan deceived the whole world?
So many videos are coming out here saying so much stuff, and Garfield seems to be totally blind to it. He don't want to see it. Come on, Moore. I want you to come to the microphone first, because Garfield already starting off talking. He ain't talking right. My man Ant over there talking about Garfield winning me over. He winning me over. Come on, Moore. You got the microphone. A lot on this conversation. Don't unmute yourself when we get going good and you get excited. But a lot's leaning on
today. Come on, Moore.
Come with it. Moore, you got a whip. Moore, what type of nonsense is going on here? Come on, Moore. You got the microphone.
Hey,
Can
first,
you believe in 20 more? I'm gonna ask you a question first. Can you believe in 2023 we got people like Garfield that's talking about this awakening ain't even of the Most High God, and it's and not that. Not only that, he got the nerve to be calling this thing something born in America, like apple pie. This thing is birthed in America.
Hey, if he's talking about the BHI thing, I can't even be mad at him. I call it the faking it myself. You know what I'm saying? Like that thing is born in America. Now, in the concept of African Jews coming off the slave ship, or people with African Jewry descent coming off the slave ship, that's not something that's birthed in America. Okay.
So all right. So from the gate, more you're saying these are two different things we got to look at.
100%. And I want to be clear about something. Like, so I don't believe Garfield's a bad person. I think he just plays it on TV, right? And I think a lot of the character that we see coming from Garfield comes from the fact that he's responding to this BHI claim, and a lot of conscious community claims that are sensational, of we are all one thing, like, so we are all Egyptians, or we're all Moors, or we're all Israelites, etc., etc., etc. I think a lot of people get caught up on a lot of Garfield's rhetoric, not understanding that he's responding to that extreme claim. Now, what I'm interested to find out today is like, because I respect the concept and the role of a skeptic in the community, right? Because when you're dealing with religion and a whole bunch of stuff, you can get people going off on a tangent. You can get people being zealous, etc., and not using logic and methodology and whatnot, right? So there is a value for skepticism. What I'm interested to find out is my man a cynic? Will he refuse to accept any kind of proof or evidence that would prove some Jews came off the slave ship, right? Not all, but some.
And you definitely agree with that. You want to put up your screen first? I want to give you a couple of minutes to go in and go, being that you're already, because I want him to sit back. He's been talking too much this week. Come on, Moore. You want to pull up a screen? I'm gonna step away for a few minutes, but I want you to get the first 10, 15 minutes to lay some of this stuff out right here.
Okay.
Because I'm already surprised at what you said, but maybe we do have to separate it. Maybe by bunching so much stuff together is adding to the confusion.
Yeah.
Type of one if y'all can hear him. Type of one if y'all can see this. Say loaded.
Can y'all see the screen?
Yes, type of one, y'all. Y'all see everything, right?
Yeah, so Garfield, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff here, because this is what I typically understand to be your criteria and your talking points. Typically, Garfield's going to come through this criteria of proving connection to African culture by talking about, like, his mother told him about Anansi stories, which was connected to the Ashanti and the Khan trickster concepts and whatnot. The fact that Jamaicans, for instance, eat ackee and saltfish, and that they know that's from Ghana, etc. That Jamaicans use words like unu, which means you or you and I, etc., and that comes from like a concept of twi, and sometimes it can be connected to an Igbo language concept. He talks about the concept of Queen Nanny was praying to Nyame, etc., during her slave revolts and whatnot. And so these are concepts that tie them back to Africa and whatnot. He doesn't see correlative ties with Hebraic culture, etc. He typically goes down the route of saying African Americans descending from Jews started in the United States of America. Like I just stated, I disagree with that concept, but I agree with what he has to say about the BHI concept. That I do believe started here. You never had. He'll typically say things like, "You never had the Torah or the New Testament Gospels in West Africa, etc." He'll typically say things like, "Rabbinic Jews don't believe in Jesus like you do in America." He'll typically say things like, "You can't show one Jewish tradition coming off the slave ships. You can't show one slave saying they were Jews or Israelites coming off the slave ships. You can't prove any of you go back to any Jews or Israelites." He'll typically say things like, "You don't want to come from them." Like, if you get him in the corner, he'll say, "You don't want to come from them," because typically the ones he'll point to that he can find in West Africa or in Africa or whatever, they were slave traders or they were involved in things of that nature, right? Then he'll finally go on to say something like, "No, you can't trace themselves back to the ancient Israelites," or "No Jew can trace themselves back to the ancient Israelites." Real quick, before I go forward, Garfield, do I have you misconstrued on any of this?
The last one is kind of tricky because that's more of a academic position that Jacob is an eponymous ancestor. So you worded it wrong though, but go ahead, continue.
So how would you word it real quick?
Because if all Jews trace their roots from a biblical perspective to Jacob, and Jacob is an eponymous ancestor, that definitely you can't trace back to Israel. You can't. It's not.
Oh, I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying from that perspective. But as
so
far
for
as
for the people who don't understand, will you quickly explain what an eponymous ancestor is?
An eponymous ancestor is basically you're basically saying where you come from as far as your roots. It's a part of what you'd call a literary trope. So, like for example, the Persians would say they come from Perseus. The Hellenistic Greeks would say they come from Helen. The Romans would say they come from Romulus. But these are not real historical people. They are just figures just to create an environment or a story to say where they come from. It's called etiology. So that's all it is. So I'm saying that the Israelites created a narrative to say they come from Israel just to give themselves a history of where they come from.
But on everything else you're saying, I'm correct, and I was basically expecting that last.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. Going forward. So to be clear, I don't need to provide any burden of proof that you or anyone else doesn't in terms of having to go back to ancestry, right? I don't need to prove connection to Africans beyond what Garfield just provided there. I don't need to prove ties to Jewry beyond what other Jews claim. For instance, what do I mean by that? Like, so we were just watching the video about with Dr. Brown and whatnot. So Dr. Brown connects himself to Jewry based upon connecting himself to people with an oral tradition with Jewry, and then people who and genetically tying themselves to such, right? So I don't need to do anything beyond it. Like, so I'm not here making like a claim like a BHI saying like I'm the blood descendant of Jacob. So I don't need to prove any blood descendancy of Jacob. That makes sense, right? So I don't.
Hold on 1 second. You're not claiming bloodline. You're not claiming bloodline for any person of the Israelite in the Israelite paradigm.
So you know what? I should have said this in the last part. Like, so let me go back to my last screen right quick. My fault. I forgot. I forgot this part because I brought you in.
I'm sorry. You're saying you are not claiming that, right? You personally.
Hold on. Let me clarify what I'm saying right quick. So to go back on that last point where it says no Jew can trace themselves back to the ancient Israelites. So you were talking about an eponymous ancestor, like a mythological ancestor, etc. Whatnot, right?
Right.
So at this juncture, like we both agree that there's no patriarchal DNA of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc. Whatnot, right? So in terms of a genetic concept, I would agree with somebody like Vocab, like there's no Jew who can genetically trace themselves back to Jacob until you get that concept. The most you can do is genetically tie yourself to like a population in the Levant somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying on that, right?
Okay.
And to be clear, I do not make the claim that all blacks are Jews, and I certainly do not demarcate European Jewry just for the simple fact that they're European. That is not something I get down on, and I do not want that misconstrued in any way, shape, or form. What am I saying? These are my talking points. I'm here talking about the Western Sahel was the most Hebrew part of West Africa. I'm saying that Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived in the Sahel prior to slavery, prior to colonization, etc. That's a key point there. All three groups are very well documented in Arabic sources and other sources. Scholars like Dr. Vince Bantu agree all three were enslaved and on slave ships, Muslims, Christians, and Jews coming from West Africa. East African slaves were also taken to the Americas and sold as such. East and West African cultures can be seen in the Gullah Geechee culture. The East and West Africans came here speaking both Arabic and Hebrew. So again, this is a snapshot of what Garfield's talking about, like the Anansi, the spider story, the trickster tales from West Africa, etc. The Aki and Sawfish, Nyame, Queen Nanny, the Maroons, Unu, all that type of stuff, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm talking about the Western Sahel or whatnot, right? I'm talking about the Gullah Geechee culture. These are the same basic ties I can point to that Garfield can touch on, right? So do we also have the Anansi the spider story in the Gullah Geechee concepts? Yes, 100%. And for those who don't know, the Gullah Geechee culture comes from the southeastern coast of America on the lowland seacoast from like Maryland all the way down to Florida, etc. Right? So there in that culture, we also have the Anansi story. We also have words like Una. We say, well, we shall laugh and see Una, right? However, we also have different aspects of language and culture and stories that show coming from a different part of West Africa. So I have full respect for Garfield and his connection to the Akan and to the Shanti, to Ghana and whatnot. However, African Americans are not a monolith and should not be seen as such. We weren't a monolith in terms of religion, practice, culture, language, none of that. And we were many cultures, languages, and practices coming over on the slave ship, as can be seen as such here. So we have two tricksters in the Gullah culture. We have the Anansi story that comes from where Garfield was talking about, but we also have Brer Rabbit. And you can see the hair stories in West Africa amongst the Wolof, the Hausa, the Fulani, the Mandinka, etc. You can also find these stories in East Africa, which is consistent with an East African slave trade, etc. He's talking about ackee saltfish. Something that's very common amongst Gullah cooking is the concept of Gullah red rice. Gullah red rice is a take on, or it's basically attributed to the concept of Jollof rice in West Africa. A lot of their cooking is seen to go back to Senegal and Sierra Leone and whatnot. And the Jollof kingdom is historically part of Mauritania, Senegal, and the Gambia. There's also the concept of like sweetgrass baskets, etc., that go back to Sierra Leone. All these places I'm talking about are based off the Western Sahel and branching off the Western Sahel, etc. Right? All these people I'm talking about, the Wolof, the Hausa, the Fulani, the Mandinka, etc., they're all connected to the Western Sahel, etc. Linguistically, we had Dr. Lorenzo Down Turner do a full-on study of, well, not a full study, because he didn't say he studied like the Arabic and the Hebrew, etc. However, he cataloged over 4,000 Gullah words, etc. Did a deep dive on the study, etc. Cataloged a lot of things, including songs and their counting system. They were able to find songs, etc. Mende songs. There's Gullah women that's on YouTube today that have gone back to Sierra Leone. It brought a tear to my eye. They start singing the songs they know in Mende. And an old woman comes up and starts holding their hand and singing the songs with them. Their counting system was the Fulani counting system. Why is this important to understand? So in other parts of slavery, for instance, like in Jamaica and elsewhere, there were certain tribes that had a dominant play on the culture. So again, you hear Garfield talking about the concept of what goes on in Ghana and whatnot, and the Ashanti and the Akan, etc. When it comes to Gullah culture, the main base to the culture, the governing star to the culture is the Western Sahel concept. This is why we see the Mende songs being kept and the Fulani system being their counting system. We also see the concept of the fact that they called on the Lord, and this is not something that's foreign to this part of West Africa. Like I said, it's very well historically documented that there was Jews, Christians, and Muslims all in this part of West Africa prior to colonialism. My man's also likes to bring out this Catalan atlas or whatnot from 1375 and ask the question, where are you on this map? Now we're gonna fight over how you pronounce Majorcan Jews and whatnot, but that's neither here nor there. But he brings but you know what I'm saying? My man likes to point out the fact that you can see Mansa Musa on this map, right? And so and there on the map they call it the Ghana Empire, but in other places of the time period it's gonna be known as the Mali Empire. He's even gonna be known as the King of Takror, depending on who you talk to, depending on who he's talking to and whatnot, right? And so what's important to note is what I'm saying is this Mali Empire is the area that I'm saying these Jews are going to be found. So there's multiple Israelite migrations into West Africa and in migrations from like this Arabia, Levant, etc. There's mainly a few that I'm going to point to here, and I'm not going to go into all the migrations I could go into, but I'm going to go into parts that are very, very key to what I'm talking about here. So there's at least one migration that we know of that came in from Yemen roughly in the 6th century that went into Turkey and Mali. There's 1000 AD and older migrations coming in from Nigeria, or coming into Nigeria, Mali, Guinea, and Senegal from Egypt, etc. And Garfield likes to talk about, there is definitely migrations coming in from the north after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, etc. Definitely don't deny that in any way, shape, or form. But what we see with all of that, and this needs to be understood, is there is a mixture of what Jews are doing in West Africa and whatnot. So I do not deny the fact that with the expulsion from Spain and whatnot, you're going to see rabbinic Judaism in any way, shape, or form. I do not deny that. However, I also accept the fact that you're also going to see Karaite Judaism with that. Karaite Judaism was alive and well, and like its golden spot was over in Spain and in North Africa. Ethiopian Jews, which we're going to see, like the Habesha, are part of the trade routes that go to West Africa, etc. The Habesha or the Ethiopian Jews are not rabbinic Jews or Talmudic Jews like you would consider most other Jews to be. They're closer to what a Karaite system is. Like I said, I'm also going to show people converting to Christianity from Judaism, and very much like you see Ethiopian Christianity being the most Jewish form of Christianity out there. They still keep the Shabbat, they circumcise, eat clean food, etc. whatnot. You're going to see the Christianity in West Africa, or the practices that are going to be tied to that are going to look like very much so like a very Jewish form of Christianity, almost like a messianic form. Again, you're also going to see Jews converting to and Christians converting to Islam and whatnot. And I'm going to make the argument that the most Jewish form of Islam that you're ever going to find is going to be in this part of West Africa. Now, some of the places that are underneath those arrows that I pointed to on that Catalan Atlas are the places of Camnoria and Mauritania. There's 3 places called B'nai Israel that you're going to find in Mali, Guinea, and Senegal. There is an area called Lam also in Mali, Kukia, which I mentioned, Tindirma also in Mali by Timbuktu, Walata in Mali. There's also the place of Futa Toro, which is in Senegal and Mauritania. The Jolof or the Wolof Kingdom, which is in Senegal, Mauritania, and the Gambia, and like the Manding area, which is like Sierra Leone, Guinea, the Gambia, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Ghana, and Liberia. These are areas where I'm saying in the Sahel that there were Jews. So going into the Tariq al-Sudan, this is a West African Arabic historical text, circa 1655. The history of the Sudan is a West African chronicle written in Arabic by Berber author Abd al-Rahman al-Sadi. It is a primary historical source for the Songhai Empire. It also speaks of prior Songhai dynasties, among the Mali Empire and the Torre. Al-Sadi was the chief secretary of the Ottoman administration of Timbuktu. The Tariq al-Sudan records and chronicles the founder of the Za or Zua dynasty was a man called Zua al-Yaman, meaning he came from Yemen. Zua al-Yaman is said to have migrated from Yemen and settled in the town of Kukia in Mali. Local legends state that Zua al-Yaman was a member of the Jewish communities that migrated from Yemen after the Aksumite Ethiopians defeated the Jewish kings of Himyar, Yusuf Dunawas, in the 6th century, circa 525 CE. Himyar was a kingdom that would be modern day Yemen and was in power from 110 BCE to 525 CE. Judaism was the state religion of Himyar since around circa 380 CE. Is that a timer?
No. That's my bad. That's a text I just read. My bad.
Oh, you Himyar also conquered the Hadramaut region of Yemen and the neighboring Sabian kingdom, etc. So this is important to note because a lot of what Garfield talks about, like he'll focus on the time period in terms of Jewish migrations to West Africa, and they'll typically focus on a period that has to do with the expulsion from Spain in 1492, etc. Whatnot. But this is well before that. This is even before the birth of the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad. Going forward. And so we can see here that Kukia is in West Africa, southeast of Mali, or southeast of Timbuktu, etc. Excuse me. We can also see in the Tariq al-Sudan that which chronicles that after Zua al-Yaman, there was 14 rulers of the Zua rulers of Kukia before the rise of Islam. Under the 15th Zua ruler, Zakosoy, there was a conversion to Islam in 1000 to 110 CE. In the history of the Sudan, there was over 30 Zulu rulers of Kukia chronicled. What became of the Zulu rulers is not necessarily recorded. We have another West African historical text called the Tariq al-Fatash, also part of the Timbuktu Chronicles. The Tariq al-Fatash is another 17th century Timbuktu chronicle of the Songhai Empire for the period from after the reign of Soni Ali from 1493 to circa 1599. Also, like the Tariq al-Sudan, the Tariq al-Fatash also mentions the Mali Empire. In manuscript C of the Tariq al-Fatash, chronicles of a community called the Bani Israel existed in Tendirma, Mali, circa 1402 CE. They were said to own 333 wells, had 7 leaders, and had an army of 1,500 men. Tendirma is in the modern Timbuktu region of Mali. So again, like Tendirma is right there. It's right there with Timbuktu, fam. You can see it right here. Many know about the Jewish expulsion of Spain in 1492 with the Alhambra Decree, but what most don't know is where Jews were enforced. Where Jews were forced to either convert to Catholicism or expelled. But what most don't know is, however, many are not aware of also that in 1492, the Soninke leader Askia Muhammad I, also called Askia the Great, who had come into power in the Timbuktu region, issued a similar decree of either convert or leave to the Jews of the area, making Judaism illegal in the area. And this is something that's important to understand. Like, so in 1492, the Jews are getting kicked out of Spain. 1492, the Jews are getting kicked out of Timbuktu, Mali. Right? So Garfield likes to point to a man that's the last rabbi in Mali in like the 1870s, 1880s. He comes from a migration that comes from after this, after the Jews were expelled, after this population was expelled and made to convert. So they're not necessarily the same population, and they're definitely close to 400 years apart. That needs to be well understood. Going forward, I'm about to read some sources from the corpus of early Arabic sources for West African history, and break down some of the what it has to say about some of West Africa. On page 108, being quoted by Al-Idrisi, it says, south of Barisa at a distance of about 10 days is the land of Lam. The people of Barisa, Silla, and Ghana make forays into the land of Lam and capture the inhabitants. Their inhabitants, according to the reports of the people of that part of the world, are Jews, but in infidelity and ignorance overcame them. And this is something that you see common in a certain part of West Africa, to where there's people being called Jews, but they don't necessarily practice that tradition anymore. There's other Jews that are definitely on it, but there's some Jews who aren't on it. Going forward, on page 185 of the same text, Ibn Sa'id says this: to the east and north of Barisa, the river Lami, which comes down from the mountains to the south of the town of Lami, debouches into the Nile. This town, which is no more than a village, owes obedience to the pagans of Lamlam. Its inhabitants are Jews of a race known among the slaves of the Maghreb. That needs to be understood right there. Its inhabitants are Jews of a race known among the slaves of the Maghreb. In Islamic sources, it's very well understood that Jews made up a very distinct portion of the regular slave population of the Maghreb. Going further, on page 117, El-Idrisi says this: according to what the merchants relate, the people of the land of Kamnuria, this is in Mauritania, right next to Senegal, claim that they are Jews. Their religion is confused. They are nothing and have no beliefs. They have no king from among themselves, nor one imposed from above, but are subjected to hardships by all the neighboring peoples who surround their land. So this is another group of people calling themselves Jews who don't necessarily follow that religion anymore, and they're also experiencing hardships. Going further, the people of Zafun take, this is from Al-Zufri, on page 99 of the same text. The people of Zafun take captives from the people of Amina, a tribe of the Janawa who live. Now, this isn't happening in Western Africa, but I want you to see what's happening. From Western Africa, there's slave raids going to certain parts of Central and Eastern Africa. The people of Zafun take captives from the people of Amina, a tribe of the Janawa who live in the eastern part of the desert between Zafun and Kaukau, which is in Mali, near the Nile of Egypt. They are people who profess Judaism. Their country is entered from Kaukau, from Mali, and Waterklan. They are the poorest of the Janawa. They read the Torah. So again, these are another people being snatched up who are also Jewish, who are not being targeted for this concept. And just so people can see, this is Camnoria going from Mauritania into northern Senegal. Now, this is something me and the brother have had a conversation about before. The B'nai Israel. We've had a real good go around on this and whatnot. Unfortunately, the brother took down the video from his channel, but you can see like a good 3/4 of it on my channel. But we're talking about the B'nai Israel Chronicles, Islamic Israelites of West Africa and the Americas. So this is one of the groups I was talking about. There's 3 areas called B'nai Israel that you can find in Mali, Guinea, and in Senegal. This is the group in Senegal. And so when the brother says that this concept of being Jews, or African descent people being Jews, it starts in America. This is where I got to point out there's literally a living, breathing group of people in West Africa right now, in Senegal right now, saying, "No, fam, we're Jews. We just don't practice Judaism." So this is from an article. I got the link right here. It says this. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but I'll read parts of the article, whatnot, for brevity, because I got a lot of slides and whatnot. It says the lush captured tree towers over the parched shrubbery at the edge of B'nai Israel, a dusty community in eastern Senegal near the border with Mali. The residents, all Muslims, are members of a tribe whose name means sons of Israel, and they trace their lineage to 2 clans, the Silla and the Drame. They say are descended from Egyptian Jews. We are all practicing Muslims and we don't want to become Jewish, Fadiga says. He's the leader of the community, the man in the center there. In fact, we don't like to talk much about our Jewish background, but we don't hide it either. We know our people came from Egypt to Somalia and from there to Nigeria, where they split about 1,000 years ago. One branch of the 2 families went to Mali, another to Guinea, and we settled here. Now here they make some links to some Wolof words in Hebrew and whatnot. The Wolof word for cheek is pronounced lachi, as in Hebrew. One of the Wolof's words for wise is pronounced the same as the Hebrew word chacham. Weaver or fabric merchant is called rab, similar to rabbi. The B'nai Israel also have a cultural trait in common with Jews and an aversion to intermarriage. According to Fadiga, the community tries not to assimilate, preferring to wed with members of the tribe who live in neighboring villages. I believe there is an element of truth in the tradition, and this is something that well, I'll have Garfield talk about that later, but I'm sure he'll want to bring that up. I believe there is an element of truth in the tradition, or to the tradition of the B'nai Israel, especially since they have nothing to gain from pretending, says Bahar, who returned from Senegal in 2011. Bahar is somebody who's important to pay attention to. If this is the one I'm thinking of, Bahar does a lot of genetic studies for Jews and whatnot. He goes on to say, they're not seeking Israeli citizenship, nor are they claiming to be Jewish. In fact, their Jewish ancestry and name can only give them problems. So again, in an Islamic world, these people don't have any benefit of claiming to be Jewish. And in fact, we're going to go on to see here, through their Jewish association, though their Jewish association is potentially problematic in a Muslim country, according to Bahar, some residents have sought to change the village name into their passports to permit travel to Mecca. So when they're trying to go to Hajj on Mecca, saying that they come from B'nai Israel is giving them a hard time. So this is, and some people are wanting to change the name of the area because it's actually giving them a hard time. So again, they're not lying, or they're saying they're not lying about descending from Jews, and continuing to claim to do so without even practicing Judaism is not a benefit. It's actually a detriment. Let me see here. Some accounts do, however, support the last leg of the journey from that Fadiga describes. B'nai Israel are speakers of the Jonki dialect, the language of the Jonki tribe, which the International Journal of African Historical Studies says migrated down the Niger River, settling in Mali, Guinea, Gambia, and Senegal. So again, their language that they speak also denotes the migration that they're talking about. Going forward. My man's likes to talk about the fact that the name he says that the people were deemed to be Jews by a dream. However, when you get into the text to some historical sources that we've both looked into together and whatnot, for instance, the Janki, the history of an Islamic clerical people of the Senegambia by Lamino Sané, they're called a Jewish called a Jewish group, a Jewish town, a thriving Jewish community that's named B'nai Israel. Like the city's called B'nai Israel. The tribe's also called that, but naming of the city is what was given by a dream, not the naming of the people or the tradition of whatnot. And on page 51 of that book, I'm going to read parts of this right quick, because what's interesting up here is my man Mungo Park is mentioned, and he's going to be very important to understand going forward in terms of understanding that there was actually New Testament text and Torah text in West Africa. Mungo Park visited B'nai Israel, etc. But we can see here its history must therefore go back some considerable time before both Park and Labat. The Tariq al-Fatash mentions a B'nai Israel in Messina, which is in Mali, in connection with the Battle of Tendirmo, again, which is in Mali, where it says certain horticultural traces of a flourishing Jewish colony called B'nai Israel were discovered. So whether or not the colony got its name from a dream or not, I don't dispute that at all in any way, shape, or form, just so we're clear. However, it's still called a flourishing Jewish colony, and that needs to be understood. Hold on, I got a bunch on that one. Let me back out of that. Go into this real quick. Sorry, family, just want to take a quick second. Now I'm gonna go into another text that I know me and Garfield have talked about. I know I've seen him talk about it on the show or whatnot, right? Which is the problem of the Judaized Berbers, which you can find in the Journal of African History, etc. Details above. So on page 318, it goes into the accounts of Valentin Fernandez from 1506 to 1507. It says that Jews known as Gaul lived in, page 319, the Western Sudan, in the country of Jolof, i.e. the Wolofs, and in Mandinga or Mandingo. They were black like the other natives. They knew nothing of synagogues and the custom of other Jews, like other types of Jews, but they dwelt in villages of their own, despised by the Negroes. They acted, played music, and sang for a living. Another writer at the end of the 16th century doubts that these are real Jews. I'm not discounting other people to doubt that. They were good-looking people, especially the women, and they roamed with their women folk from country to country, like the gypsies. They worked as weavers, shoemakers, and iron workers. In wartime, they were trumpeters, encouraging the fighters. Their laws forbade them to enter the house and share the meal of one who was not a member of the tribe. If one of them consorted with a woman not of the tribe, the couple were sold or killed. They did not bury their dead, but hid them in hollow tree trunks and hung them on trees. The Negroes believed that the burial of a Jew caused drought or harvest failure, since the Jews were an accursed tribe. Fernandez reports that rich Jews, who, however, granted, and this needs to be understood, there's two different classes of Jews in the Maghreb here, and what happens to you definitely depends on what class you live with. Fernandez reports that rich Jews, who, however, groaned under the yoke of their masters, the Muslims, lived in Walata. Again, that's also in Mali. They were itinerant traders, goldsmiths, and jewelers. Salt was exported from Walata to Timbuktu. There were Jews also in Futa. Again, this is Futa Toro. This is an area in Senegal, etc. Right? Who had been living there since ancient times, according to Leo Africanus. The Africans at first adhered to Judaism, then Christianity, and finally to Islam. One more time. The Africans at first adhered to Judaism, then to Christianity, and finally to Islam. So what's important about this page here is we're getting Jews in at least three distinct spots. In Jolof, amongst the Wolof people, amongst them in Mandinga, amongst the Mandingo people, and also in Futa, amongst the Fulani people. That needs to be very well understood. This is all within the Senegambia. Again, this is the area that the Wolof inhabit, right? This is like the Manding speaking areas, etc. This is with the Torah up here, on the left, on the Senegal River or whatnot. And Futa Torah had control over many of these areas here, which we see in Futa Jalon, which is in Guinea, Masina, which is in Mali, and Sokoto, which branches all the way off into Nigeria. These are all Fulani states. Again, so when my man says, "Where are you on this map?" These are the areas that I'm talking about in the Western Sahel. Before I go any further, Garfield, any questions?
I love the presentation. I just want to be clear, though. Are you saying that these Africans who encountered people with Judaism were converted to the religion, and that eventually some of them might have come on the slave ship as Jews? So you're saying these converted people who are Africans converted to this religion, or converts converted these people and brought Judaism to them, and then they might have come? If you're saying that, I think that's a reasonable argument. I actually like that argument. Because if you're saying it's converted Jews, but again, I would love to see the people coming off the slave ship practicing this tradition. That's what everybody's waiting for.
So to be clear, the argument I'm making is the same argument that most other Jews are making, right? Like, so I'm saying that there's Jewish groups that come in.
I'm sorry, not to cut you. You said most other Jews. Who are the most other Jews you're referring to? Because most of the people that I read right now,
I would have finished it.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I was gonna give for instance, like when Dr. Michael Brown was talking about, he was rebutting the concept that where Al-Azhar was trying to say that they're all European and whatnot. He was like, no. The genetic studies show that there's a certain group of men that went to Europe and took European women, etc., and the women converted to Judaism, etc., whatnot, and they propagated that way. Just like how the Lemba talk about that there was a group of men that went to East Africa. It was just the men, and then they propagated with women of East Africa, whatnot. So I'm saying that there's migrations coming in from Egypt, from East Africa, from Yemen, that come in and propagate with the women of West Africa. And so there's going to be some of them are converts, some of them are not, right? But altogether, like at the end of the day, I mean, the nation, the nation of Israel is a nation of converts. So.
You said some of them are converts and some of them are not. So who are the ones that are not converts?
The ones coming in, right?
Coming in where?
Coming in from Egypt, East Africa, and from Yemen and whatnot.
Okay, so were those people on the slave ships?
I'm talking about the descendants and whatnot.
Were those people who came across, their descendants are converted people or bloodline people?
You're going to have a mixture of both.
Mixture of both. All right. So produce that evidence.
So just like with the Lemba, how you have like multiple different haplogroups amongst the Lemba, just like with the Ashkenazi, having multiple different haplogroups amongst the Ashkenazi. So amongst the women that they're coming to mix in with, there's men in that group who aren't of the same lineage of the people coming in, right? So the men in that group are definitely like, so the women, right? The men that are different haplogroups that stick with it, they're going to be converts with it, right? But not all of them are going to be converts in this. Like I'm saying, there's a group coming in who ain't going to be converts for them, and they're going to have a lineage with it, right? It just is what it is.
Were these people that came across the slave trade, were they sub-Saharan Africans?
Were the people that, say that one more time?
Or were they descendants of sub-Saharan Africans, the people that came over on the slave trade?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm done with the questions. You could carry on.
I mean, there's admixture of people coming in from Levant and other places, but yeah, they're 100%. Yeah, they're the majority of their autosomal DNA is going to be sub-Saharan South Africa, or sub-Saharan Africa, excuse me. Is that clear or no?
Yeah, that's fine, brother. That's fine. That's fine.
No worries. So, going into Servants of Allah was from Sylvian Daouf. Now I'm going to touch on the concept, like the brother talks about. There's no New Testament or Gospels or Torah in West Africa, in this part, etc. So this is something I like to challenge and whatnot. So something she cites in her text on page 61. As besides their literacy and dedication to their faith, what distinguished the clerics, teachers, students, and rulers in church was contact with the wider world. The intelligentsia of Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Iraq, Egypt, and Arabia, whom they met in Mecca and Cairo, or in their homeland when the foreigners visited. The scholars were familiar with the works of Muslim intellectuals from a wide range of countries who used Arabic as their vehicle of communication. That is important to understand because Arabic is the lingua franca of West Africa at the time of slavery. They also had access to books from other religions in their Arabic versions, as confirmed by Mungo Park, who mentions having seen the Pentateuch of Moses that 18th century. European philosophers also, such as Plato, Aristotle, Hippocrates, and Euclid, were also known in the Arabic translations. So also in this book, so again, at the end of the 18th century, Mungo Park goes into the Senegambia and finds these texts there in Arabic. What we also find over here are slaves with similar texts also in Arabic. So on page 165, we see Abdul Rahman Ibrahim Masari. He's a Fulani. He has a Bible in Arabic. On page 160, same page, Abu Bakr al-Sadiq, a Mandingo slave. He also has a Bible in Arabic. Same page, Omar ibn Saida, a Fulani slave. He has a Bible in Arabic. This one's really interesting. Page 180, London, a Mandingo slave in Savannah, Georgia. He writes the Gospel of John with the Arabic script using the but he uses the Gullah dialect of English. So he's writing in Gullah, but he's using the Arabic script to do so. This is not something that was taught to him by any European out there. This needs to be understood. A slave is coming off the slave ship writing the Gospel of John in Arabic, in the Gullah dialect. Again, page 165 and 166 in the Senegambia, where Mungo Park also finds the Tawrat la Musa, Zabura Dawidi, in the Anguilla la Isa. And you can hear by the name of it, by how I'm talking about it, it's got that Spanish influence coming in from most likely from Spain, etc. Again, this is Mungo Park. This is the route that he went. He took two trips into West Africa, and you can see the routes he went the first time in the green, going through the Senegambia, etc. And again, this is where he finds these texts. So there were writings of the Torah, and also in the Injil, or the New Testament, in West Africa, and also we can see the writings of the Injil coming here with slaves themselves, writing them themselves in their own tongue. What's also interesting of note is in the documentary that Garfield brought to the people, The Cryptic Quest, Dr. Amir Jamal Torre talks about William B. Hodgson's work in terms of recording African languages in the South and whatnot. And some of the works that he records are in fact London's work, the Mandingo slaves' work, about in terms of writing the Gospel of John in the Arabic and Gullah dialect. Again, the Gospel is written in the Negro Patois of English with Arabic characters by a Mandingo slave in Georgia. You can see where it's translated. Once he translates it into English, the first chapter of John, it says this: first chapter of John, written again. It took the man a long time to understand. He thought it was just gibberish, and then he recognized, oh, he's actually writing. He's using the Arabic script to write Gullah. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, all in Gullah. Now we're going to get into the same concept of this old messianic concept of West Africa, because I told you there was Christians and Jews in West Africa, not just Muslims, etc. Right? And so going back into the corpus of Arabic sources of early Arabic sources for West African history, page 310, we see this. Al-Zulfi says that the people of the lands of the Sudan, whose capital city is Ghana, we're talking about like the Ghana Empire, etc. This time, formerly professed Christianity until the year 496 after Hijrah, which is 1076, 1077. Again, one more time, Al-Zulfi says the people of the lands of the Sudan, whose capital city is Ghana, formerly professed Christianity until the year 1076/77, when they turned Muslim and became good Muslim. So up until the 11th century, they were Christian in West Africa, in the area of what was then the Ghana Empire. The Ghana Empire is not understood to be modern day Ghana. The Ghana Empire is in the Sahel. It's part of Mali, etc. Going further, Ibn al-Dawadari writes this. So in the 11th century, we have them being Christians in the Ghana Empire. In the 14th century, in the year 1324, we have this, the king of Takrur, which is again Abu Bakr bin Musa, right? One of the Musas. The king of Takrur arrived for the noble Hijaz. His name was Abu Bakr bin Musa. He remained in Egypt for a year before taking himself to the Hijaz. He had much gold with him. His is the country which put forth gold. Goes on to say, I asked the king of Takrur, how is the description of the place where gold grows with you? He replied, it is not in the part of our land that belongs to the Muslims, but in the land that which belongs to the Christians of Takrur. So when, again, 1324, there's still Christians in West Africa in Takrur. And I'll show here that Takrur, again, is in this area of Senegal in southern Mauritania. He says, we dispatch collectors to take from them a species of tribute due to us and obligatory. And I'm going to bring that part up later as well. The type of tribute that they get due to us and obligatory upon them. They are special lands which put forth gold in this fashion. It consists of small species of varying sizes, some like little rings, some like carob seeds, and the like. I said, why don't you take this land by conquest? He replied, if we conquer and take it, it does not put forth anything. We have done this in many ways, but seen nothing there. But when it returns, when we give it back to the Christians, he's saying, it puts forth as usual. This is the most amazing thing, and is perhaps due to the increase in the oppressiveness of the Christians. So the Christians were running the gold trade in the part of West Africa to the point where they were able to push back on the Muslims a little bit. And the Muslims are recording this. So we can see here again, Takrur is right there in northern Senegal, southern Mauritania and whatnot. And this is a consistent area that we see Christian activity, Jewish activity, etc. Dr. Vince Bantu, in his book, A Multitude of All Peoples, on the cover of his book, he has a very interesting scene about people wearing a mask at a nativity situation, right? Or people wearing masks in a nativity scene. And he has very interesting things to say about these people wearing these masks. He says, perhaps the most intriguing example of contextualization is in early Nubian Christianity is a painting in the monastery at the capital of Dongola from the late 10th century. This nativity painting contains typical images, including Mary and a child, shepherds and angels. However, to the right of Mary and the baby Jesus is a unique painting of Africans worshiping the birth of the Savior wearing animal crest masks, loincloths and holding percussion instruments. It is believed that these Africans may have belonged to the Bambara tribe, which later occupied much of modern Mali, Burkina Faso, and Senegal. One more time, these people wearing these animal masks in Nubia are believed to be from the Bambara tribe, which later occupied much of modern Mali, Burkina Faso, and Senegal. So I've recently, not too long ago, I got to interview Dr. Vince Bantu, and he definitely agrees on the concept of whatever Christianity came in that was in Takrur came in from the East. It was not a Western form of Christianity in any way, shape, or form. So prior to colonialism, there was an African form of Christianity being practiced in West Africa, etc. Most likely having ties to a really Jewish form of Christianity at that. Also, in the documentary, The Cryptic Quest, that Garfield brought out to the people, we have one of my favorite scholars, Dr. Ephraim Isaac, who gives a very interesting take on Ethiopian culture and how it could have come to America. The whole gist of the documentary is based upon connecting a church in Georgia with Ethiopian practices, etc. And something that Dr. Ephraim Isaac stipulates is that Ethiopians were taken in this transatlantic slave trade. He talks about a land route going from Mozambique, like slaves being taken from Ethiopia to Mozambique, and then a land route from Mozambique to Angola. Almost like an African Trail of Tears is what the narrator calls it. What's also known as a fact is that over almost 541,000 slaves came from the ports of Mozambique and in Madagascar. That's something I'm going to be touching on later as well. So the slave population and the potential Israelite population of those slaves is not just relegated to West Africa. It needs to be understood that it could come from all these parts of Africa that the slaves were taken from, including East Africa. What Ephraim Isaac also talks about in the documentary, they're examining marks on a pew, etc., whatnot, on a few pews, and he mentions the concept of a shorthand version of the Tetragrammaton being written in three yods. And something he also says, which is interesting, is that the yod, in an individual sense, also is a representation of the Decalogue or the 10 Commandments in and of itself. And so it's a postulate. I'll say postulate, even though in the documentary, and I showed it on my channel, they were pretty definite about the fact that there was ge'ez on the pews and that these yods were on the pews, etc. Going forward. So there's African culture, there's African Christian culture amongst the Gullah. And this needs to be further investigated, like people like Dr. Vince Bantu was spoken about. And when you look, there's a lot of smoke and fire. Again, like I said, the gospel genre is written in the Gullah using Arabic. Possible Ge'ez characters, the Ha and Sa, were carved in the pews in First African Baptist Church. Wooden replicas of the ark at First African Baptist Church were made by the slaves, which is very reminiscent of what the Ethiopians do, and also the Lemba. The Lemba are a very interesting group of people because some of them are messianic. For instance, Kohen HaMedishe is messianic, and he was not converted to Christianity by a missionary. He said that was all him. Ethiopian crosses are on the window of First African Baptist Church. Its original name was the Ethiopian Baptist Church of Jesus Christ, which is now called the First African Baptist Church. River baptisms and processions and songs about the River Jordan, which are very similar to the concept of what you see in Ethiopia, are found amongst the Gullah. You don't find these amongst other Christians in the area. This is not a tradition that they learned from Christians in the area that they were in. Church houses where men and women sit apart is very much like how Ethiopian Christians and Jews get down. They were buried facing the east for Gabriel to blow his horn on Judgment Day. Another practice of theirs. And again, these are just some quick, small pictures of what I just gave verbiage to. And I forgot to put in the Congolese cosmogram, which also goes back to another form of West African Christianity, which is a Catholic form amongst the Congolese people. But going forward, the ancient Israelite culture amongst the Gullah. This is what my man wants to know, right? Like I mentioned the Hebrew shorthand for the Yahweh, he's not going to accept that. I mentioned the Hebrew shorthand for the Decalogue, he's not going to accept that. But what you're going to find also is the concept of first harvest festivals and crop suppers or whatnot, just like you do in the text or whatnot, just like you do in the Bible or whatnot. This is a situation to where, and I'll put up the references for this in a little while, to where the Gullah people took their crops down to the church house, divvied them up amongst the people, and then had a great feast, danced all night, and then prayed towards the sun and whatnot, bowing and prostrating and whatnot. They also did a ring shout. This ring shout is this is very much in line with the concept of how you celebrate a feast in the concept of Hebrew and whatnot, right? So the word for feast in Hebrew is the word chagag, and it literally has the meaning of a circular procession or whatnot. And this is something you can see, for instance, when the Israelites are going in procession around Jericho or whatnot, 7 times or whatnot, right? It's the same word, same concept. They have a very interesting concept of something called bad luck foods in the Gullah concept, such as rabbit, certain fish, and voodoo chicken. They don't eat chicken. Now there's certain, this needs to be understood. So the Gullah are not a monolith, right? There's different practices amongst different people. They do similar things for different reasons, and that needs to be understood. Similar things for different reasons. There's some Gullah who would make a voodoo chicken and actually eat the thing, right? There's other Gullah who would stay away from it, call it a bad luck food. I can't touch that. I can't touch it, like a food sacrificed to another god kind of a concept, right? So again, the stuff we see about the rabbit, unclean food. Certain kind of fish, like catfish or eels, etc., right? Like those are going to be unclean fish, etc., right? And again, like I said, certain of them would not eat food sacrificed to voodoo gods, etc. Something very intriguing about how they prayed in their form of Christianity was they would pray 3 times a day facing the east, like Daniel in Daniel chapter 6:10. This is not something that you see amongst other Christian groups or whatnot. And it's not, but however, it's not uncommon to see Ethiopian Christians and Christians in Egypt, etc., in the East or whatever, stand, bow, and prostrate when they pray. But again, this is something that's very particular to and again, like, so with Jews who convert to like some form of Christianity or make some kind of messianic form of Judaism and whatnot, you're going to see something like this. You're going to see these kind of practices retained and whatnot. So again, this is very particular to Gullah Christianity that you don't see anywhere else around, where they're doing this, standing 3 times a day, standing by and prostrating, etc., towards the east, like Daniel in Daniel 6:10. Something very intriguing that they did is within the praise house, which is separate from the church house, they kept the just law of the praise house. This was a judgment system, very much like you find in Exodus 18:17 through 27, where they had a very much so like the judges system that Moses inherited from Jethro and whatnot, right? To where judges were trained to be able to judge over so many people and whatnot, right? And if the people did not adhere to the judgment, which was coming from the Bible and whatnot, then they would be removed from the praise houses. They wouldn't be part of the communities anymore. This is very, when I was talking to Remy Lona, like this was something that was very interesting to me, because typically when I talk to Africans or African Americans talk to Africans, it's hard to connect on culture that got saved or whatnot, right? And we were talking about the concept of Omanana and whatnot. He and I may disagree on DNA on certain things, but on his documentation of Omanana, I don't necessarily disagree. And one thing he talked about was the fact that they didn't need policemen, etc. They didn't need like enforcement or whatnot. They followed the law, and they just dealt with the enforcement of the council and whatnot. And so I described this part to him here and whatnot, to where the Gullah themselves in their own literature are saying that they had no need for police. The only time that they use police is when people from the outside came in and committed some kind of crime or whatnot, because none of them wanted to break the law of God, etc. Right? And so if there was an issue, they would take the issue to the praise house. There was at least 3 people in the praise house in terms of like council members that were breaking down the law to the people based upon the scripture, etc. And if the people involved did not follow the guidance from the council, they were expelled from the membership of the community. They weren't part of the so-called church or the church membership, etc. anymore. Just like we see in the scrolls and whatnot, like being cast out from the people, etc. Something very interesting here is that community membership started at the age of 12 after the seeking ceremony, whatnot. Something that's not like the concept of coming of age in Judaism or whatnot, or in Jewish concepts, or even in biblical concepts. You see even Ishmael getting circumcised after the sage, etc. Going forward. Again, talking about the just law of the praise house. This is something very interesting. Because this is something you don't see in other Christian culture. You don't see this in the surrounding Christian culture. This is something specific to the Gullah Geechee and whatnot. And if you get a chance, go check out Garfield Tommy Rob Warren's breakdown of the Gullah Geechee and his presentation. We disagree, but something he does agree on is the fact that the Gullah Geechee made their own Christianity. It was theirs. It wasn't something that somebody else gave to them. It was their own thing. And part of that is this. Part of that is the just law of the praise house. So on page 277 of Gullah Days, again, this is written by Gullah people themselves. It says this: but fearing the Lord was only one part of the reason a few crimes of any sort were committed on the island and taken to the mainland to resolve. Gullah people on Hilton Head settled their disputes at their community praise house whenever possible. The praise house functioned as a religious court, and was considered to administer the just law, in quotes. The just law was a concept that existed during slavery and gained new importance during the disenfranchisement and segregation. The unjust law was off island in the country courts, in the county courts of law. It was much safer to trust one's fellow praise house members to settle a dispute under the just law. Praise house members were required to take a problem which occurred into the community to church leaders for review and an opportunity to mediate before resorting to a governmental court. Going further, and as few offenses involved violent crime, the praise house was quite capable of handling disputes. If you had a quarrel with your neighbor, for instance, the praise house would mediate it says Emery S. Campbell, who's the author of this book. Regular meetings of the praise houses were Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings. The meetings to settle arguments were often held on Saturdays or Sunday. On Saturdays or Sundays. So this is something that's very interesting. So in Ethiopian Christian circles and whatnot, again, the most Jewish form of Christianity, i.e., like Messianic Judaism, they still keep the Shabbat, but they also do things on Sunday. This is something that you see here. They're administering law on the Shabbat, and they're also doing so on Sundays as well. Again, each praise house usually had 3 leaders. People looked up to, again, very similar to the concept of what you see with Moses, Miriam, and Aaron, etc. Right, coming out of Egypt or whatnot. 3 being the minimum or whatnot. Right. People looked up to their leaders, and especially to the praise house head. I won't get into the rest of this because y'all get the basic concept. Going forward. Going into Drums and Shadows. This is a book that I recommend everybody grabbing. So this is a book to where you have Gullah Geechee people getting their stories recounted and told and written down for the sake of posterity in like the 30s and whatnot, right? 1930s and whatnot. And you having people in this book who are over 110 years old. Some of them are like over 115. I think one was like 120. People alive before the Civil War, etc., right? Way before the Civil War, giving you their breakdown of their history and their culture, etc., right? One of the things they break down is the concept of the crop separates in the first harvest feast, like I was talking about. You can see the pages numbered here for that. Page 120, 123, 132, 149, 161, where they detail the concept of them taking the food to the church house, dividing it up amongst the people, having a feast, etc., and then and doing their concept of a circle dance, etc., or a ring shout, etc. Again, also in Drums of Shadow, they break down the concept of the bad luck foods, the foods to be avoided. Very much like the clean and unclean food concept. Man.
All right, sorry, y'all. I had to step away. Garfield ready? Mukra, I guess.
No, let him continue. Let him finish. I wanted to go 30 minutes more. It's good. I'm here. I ain't got nothing to do right now.
Okay,
I was actually busy today, but I became unbusy.
Uh-oh.
If that's what the word. So
all right,
let him continue. I wanted to finish everything. Every single thing.
Now you see how he's quiet, more rolling, y'all. Garfield not interrupting. Go ahead, keep going more. I would like him to do the same when he jump on. I'm mute myself. Go ahead.
So far, Garfield, you got anything you want to give input on?
Nah, I'm good, bro. I took some notes, but continue, brother. Continue.
Because I've been going for a minute. I don't mind stopping, bro. Like I got more stuff.
Go 30 more minutes, bro. I'm listening to everything you said. I think Israel deserves this, and I want you to finish.
You got it. And keep on going. Let's see where I'm at with my slides. You know what? I'm going to stop sharing this one, and I'm going to share another one right quick. Give me 2 seconds. Because there's another particular concept that is very particular to the West African Muslims that come off the slave ships. And so here we go.
I'm sorry, Moore. I got a question. You said that.
Oh, Brent walked away. Oh no, my screen's not showing. Okay, go ahead.
I got one question. You're saying that when the slaves came off the ships, they spoke Arabic and they also spoke Hebrew. Am I correct?
I was just getting in them slides right now.
All right, cool. All right, get into that. All right.
There we go. So there's one that you already know about, which is the Billy Simons character, which I'll pull them slides up in a second. But I wanted to get into a quick West Africa, Israelite practice, and then dovetail right into the Arabic Hebrew concept, if you don't mind. So again, going into that right quick.
Hey, Brian, I'm here, but I'm on my phone.
Shout out to Dunamis, man. My favorite
What's
mucker.
going on, boy?
Okay.
Hey, real quick, Eunice, what was that Hebrew name you was talking about, bro?
Don't let them throw y'all off now.
I got my slides. I'm not getting thrown off. What was that Hebrew name, bro?
David Ben Yah, beloved son of God.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what's up. Shout out to the muck run. You know what I'm saying?
Shout out to all the 2.9ers in here.
Hey, and to them 3.9ers. You know what I'm saying? Garfield got you beat.
I knew it was going to start. He just said he wasn't going to fall into the muck run. I knew it was going to start.
Hey, we're all friends here. We're all friends here. You know what I'm saying? So again, this is a particular concept I thought was interesting. So something me and Garfield talked a lot about was something he says a lot. And again, I respect the question. It's a fantastic question. Can you show me a practice? Can you show me anything like that? Because again, we're talking about material culture, whatnot, right? And something I like to do is point to not only just what's coming off the slave ship, but also point to what was going on in West Africa that we can document, right? And so something that I like to talk about is the concept of the tithing system in West Africa. Because a lot of people don't know that like in this part of West Africa, we were using the tithing system and whatnot, right? And this is what I was talking about in terms of the Judaism or the Islam being one of the most Jewish forms of Islam you're going to see. The Muslims are praying 3 times a day and not 5. Again, like the Bible, 3 times, not 5. And they use a tithing system in West Africa among Islamic Israelites and Muslims. So somebody I love to talk about quite a bit is Omar ibn Said, who was an educated Muslim. I'll read this right quick. African born around about 1770 in Fouta Toro, which is in modern day Senegal. Right, captured at age 37. He was he was not like a young person. Like Bilal Muhammad was, I think, 14 when he was captured. Omar ibn Said was 37 and brought to South Carolina to be sold. He remained enslaved until his death in 1864. Something he says in his own memoirs, that he writes in Arabic, is something very, very interesting here. Before I came to the Christian country, my religion was the religion of Muhammad, the apostle of God. May God have mercy upon him and give him peace. I walked to mosque before daybreak, washed my face and head, hands and feet. I prayed at noon, prayed in the afternoon, prayed at sunset, prayed in the evening. I gave alms every year, gold, silver, seeds, cattle, sheep, goat, rice, wheat, and barley. I gave tithes of all the above named things. Why is that important to understand? It's important to understand because Muslims don't give 10%. Muslims give 2.5%. And this is something that I even had Garfield ask an Islamic scholar that he brought on to his channel. I asked him, did he know of any West African Muslims that were tithing on it? He said no. Now, what's important to note about that is his expertise in Islam was from a period of time after this period that I'm talking about. So going forward, a book here that's very important to what we're talking about and dovetailing into is 5 classic Muslim slave narratives, edited by Muhammad al-Akhri. And so this says the same thing that I just read off, just so so you understand it's the same stuff. But this is what my man wrote in English, but this was originally written in Arabic. Going forward, what he writes though is on page 20. Or no, he doesn't write this, but this is very interesting to understand. And so Omar ibn Said did become a Christian at one point in time. Again, he was reading the Bible in Arabic, etc., all that type of stuff, right? And this is something that's very interesting about what his church members said about him. Omar proved useful at church due to his knowledge of Arabic and Hebrew. Umar proved useful at church due to his knowledge of Arabic and Hebrew. Asheville Citizen, 1887, quoted in Austin. So he came off the slave ship, tithing, not praying 5 times a day, and knowing Arabic and Hebrew. Coming from a part of, again, Fouta Toro was a part of West Africa that's in Senegal, like I'm talking about, where we have the long history of Jews, Christians, etc., whatnot, right? And this is what I'm talking about, like in terms of how that practice is looking different than other Islamic practices. You don't see Muslims praying less than 5 times a day. You don't see Muslims tithing, etc., and you don't see Muslims speaking Hebrew, fam. Not like this. Hold on, pardon me. I skipped on some. Awesome. Join right quick. So yesterday you heard me talking about, or the last time I was on, there was a brother on talking with Garfield talking about I think from Liberia, talking about the Torod people or whatnot, right? And so you heard me talking about the Torod clerisy, which was a mixture of 5 different the lower class people of 5 different groups: the Tuareg, the Hausa, the Fulani, the Wolof, and the Mandinka, etc. And so they came together and made their own big group, and they stationed themselves at the Futa Toro, and they took on the Fulani language together. So they were 5 groups of people, but they operated under one language, etc. So going forward, they have a well, I'll let that go. But they have a tradition about coming from Mount Tor, etc. in the Sinai Peninsula, whatnot. But that's not what I want to get into. I want to get into the fact that these particular Muslims, this particular group, this Torod Bay Islamic group, they also use the tithe. This isn't something that one person is just talking about off the side of the neck. This is something that they actually do as a group of people, etc. Let me get to it right quick. Here we go. Importantly, the Imam of the Muslim community was everywhere recognized as the principal political and religious figure. It was to the Imam that all believers looked for the maintenance of Islamic traditions and the enforcement of the Sharia and the wisdom necessary for a sound economic and social policy. It also fell to the Imam to provide internal and external security. This he accomplished through the emirs, who were responsible for police and military affairs. In all these communities, taxation was based on the principle of the ushur, the tithe, levied on harvest and legacies. Revenues from the ushur, zakat, and jizya, as well as taxes collected on caravans, and 1/5 of the revenues, the khums, from military expeditions, etc., were distributed by the Imam and his officials in the form of public assistance. So again, they're taking an ushur, a tithe, separate from zakat and jizya. This is not a common thing for Muslims and whatnot. Again, when Garfield asked the scholar on his channel, and Garfield got the question from me. Garfield texted me and asked me, "What questions you want me to ask you?" I said, "Ask him about the tithe." The dude clearly said no. They gave 2.5%. And so I'm gonna stop that one right quick. Stop sharing there, and finish it off on the Billy Simons one right quick, because I thought this was interesting myself. Hold on. Let me share my screen one more time. And I appreciate y'all for your patience. Oh, hit the wrong button. Sorry. Here we go. Brain is not. There you go. There we go. That's what's up. So the infamous Billy Simons. The first mention of dark-skinned Jews in the United States was a mulatto Jew in 1668 named Solomon, the first Jew to live in New England, and perhaps the offspring of an African slave mother and white Jewish father. However, the more well-known first recorded Jew of African descent in the United States was Billy Simons in the 1850s, a scholar in both Hebrew and Arabic, born in Madagascar in 1780 and reportedly from a Jewish African tribe, a claim supported by 2 cantors and other authorities. He was purchased into slavery by white Jewish slave owners and brought to South Carolina, where he proceeded to become the first admitted black member to a white shul in Charleston. The constitution of the same shul, Kahal Kodesh Beth Elohim, is infamously stated that it accepted any member, provided he or she or they are not people of color. So he shouldn't have been accepted, but he was accepted because of his understanding of the practice, etc. The KKBE Constitution opened membership to all who followed its requirements except people of color. But it is known that a slave named Billy Simons, called by the congregants Uncle Billy, attended the synagogue in the 1850s. He claimed that he was from the Rechabite tribe in Africa. This group appears in the 35th chapter of Jeremiah. They originally lived in the land of Israel, and according to the commentary, David on the book of Jeremiah, the tribe traced its lineage back to Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, who according to tradition converted. Billy always wore well, that part doesn't matter. But so again, we're seeing this Billy Simons character claiming a Jewish descent. Now he's coming from East Africa. I'm not tripping on that, right? I'm making no amends. I'm not claiming like this should be transported to West Africa. What I just showed you prior to this was somebody who comes from a tradition of Arabized or Islamicized Jews, etc., whatnot, right? Who's practicing a Jewish form of Islam, right? Or the most Jewish form of Islam you're going to see has practices of Judaism within the Islam and whatnot, right? That you don't see in other forms of Islam at all. And here you coming on the other side of Africa, right? You see the same thing. Somebody who again, like Omar ibn Said, can speak Arabic and Hebrew, has a Jewish tradition coming from Africa, whatnot, and still getting involved in the slave trade. So what am I saying? I'm saying that we're seeing evidence of this coming from both sides of Africa, like I said, and that the American population, the African American population, is not one homogenous population, and it's very mixed. It has very mixed descendancy and whatnot, and that should be taken into account. Now, what's interesting is that this is very reminiscent of the concept of the Lemba or the people from Comoro Islands and whatnot, to where the Lemba say that they came here on slave ships. Cohen Hamadisha said that they came here on slave ships, right? When I talked to Tudor Parfit was saying that we need to do more DNA tests to see if we can corroborate this or whatnot, because we're finding people who have different haplogroups. For instance, like Dante Fortin, for instance, right, who's EM84. When studying the Lemba, they don't just carry haplogroup J; they carry haplogroup E. Not just haplogroup E, but E1B1B as well. When talking to Tudor, he was stipulating that the DNA tests weren't as specific as they could have been in terms of the STR count, and a more specific test could be done to find out what kind of E1B1B they have. Is it the same kind that Dante has, or is it not? Because Dante has an E1B1B that you can find heavily in the people of Yemen and Arabia and whatnot. So if people like the Lemba are found to have that same type of E1B1B, that points to another type of way of being able to connect yourself to people coming from East Africa, etc. Right? We already see now, taking DNA tests, that we have people who have a lot of autosomes that connect to East Africa. Right? A lot of people in YAP have autosomes that come from Somalia, come from Ethiopia, come from Kenya, whatnot. Right? And that's because we have people coming in from the east side of the slave trade, like Uncle Billy and other people. Now, Garfield did email a scholar about this, because he was bent about the concept of Billy Simons being a Jewish settler, and he wanted to go debunk the thing. And the scholar told him that this, however, perhaps raises the question of the accuracy of the DNA test, since it is known and demonstrated through DNA that a portion of the Bantu-speaking people, the Lemba, are likely descended from Jews, as they have long asserted. It is likely that migration centuries ago accounts for this in both areas. There is a process of formal conversion going on for several years now. So basically, now that we know that there's people coming from that part of the world that are connected to the Jewish population, you got to look at this again. You can't just rule it out. It's very possible that my man not only could have come from there, but could have been descended from the same population, for instance, that the Lemba, the same type of population the Lemba could have come from. If that makes sense. But I've been going for a hot minute. I'll shut it down for right now. I'll let Garfield pick it up, and I can go further if I need to.